What is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today, driving home from work on a Sunday. Yesterday during Wrestlepalooza, I mean, out of everything that happened during that show, it was a good show. It wasn't a great show. I honestly think that like the show sort of progressed as it went its way through. But one of the weirdest segments, and maybe even like WWE history, was Undertaker, American Badass, coming out and telling Stephanie McMahon that she was going to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame for WrestleMania 42, the class of 2026. The first person to go in, a lot like last year when Triple H was named. He got told, honestly, you know, a long way before the people normally got told. But Undertaker telling Steph was not smooth. It was almost the death of the Undertaker character in WWE. The next time you try to send that guy out as the dead man in the hat and the big coat, maybe even the gloves, I guess, like, we're all gonna remember Podcast Undertaker coming up saying, hey, anybody sitting in that seat, him barely getting over the barricade, getting over there. I kind of ripped this apart last night as I was watching the show about Stephanie getting into the Hall of Fame. Now, you know, Shane McMahon's son has gone on Twitter and kind of knocked WWE for not putting Shane in. I think we all know, much like that sign that was at Wrestlepalooza last night for the Brock Lesnar entrance, with the guy holding the sign basically saying he shouldn't be here, and we all know why. I think we all know why Vince McMahon is not able to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. The man is the Hall of Fame. We wouldn't be here. We wouldn't, be celebrating WrestleMania 42. We wouldn't even have a WWE Hall of Fame if it wasn't for Vince McMahon. I think over time, time will heal some wounds, and I honestly hope that before Vince passes away, he can get his moment and accept, his time in the Hall of Fame. But there is definitely some trouble in the McMahon family. I think we could figure that out from the Netflix documentary, just paying attention to normal wrestling news, with Stephanie McMahon taking over as the CEO of the company, her stepping down and removing herself from the company completely to go home and be a mother, and Vince taking that role back over in order to cross the T's and dot the I's to sell the company. Who knows, if Vince didn't, butt his way back into the company to sell his portion of the company. He hasn't even sold all of his shares, if Stephanie would still be there. But let's remove ourselves from that situation and just talk about Stephanie McMahon. I think it will be fun when Stephanie has her moment on the stage. I think, the lead up, you'll be able to see pictures of her in the old WWF magazine, her in the catalog selling the Rocker shirt, the Andre the Giant shirt, hawking the merch, being the early model in her age. The Andre the Giant, the shirt, that of course is his size, that you can wear as a shirt or belt it off and wear it as a mini. Shout out Artie Reynolds. Don't know what you're doing these days, but I always loved Wrestle Crap Radio, and when I listen to that episode, it always makes me laugh, even though you guys run that joke into the ground in that one episode like 42 times. But Steph, she first popped up as a part of the Austin Undertaker gimmick, with her, being around, and of course, she got abducted by the Undertaker. I think Undertaker tried to marry her, tried to, put her on the Undertaker symbol and sacrifice her to the gods, I guess you can say, and Vince, yelling and running off like he's going to fight The Undertaker himself before Stone Cold Steve Austin stepped in to save the day. I think the Steph character sort of like fell back into the back for a while, but when she came in during the test situation with her, being engaged to a wrestler, I honestly thought it was going to be a huge push for Test. Big, muscly, long-haired, blonde guy. I'm not saying the guy was Hulk Hogan or nothing like that, but the look of what Vince McMahon loved, and he got a push awfully fast. And I don't know if they cooled on him or they pushed him to the point they really wanted to push him to get it over. His WrestleMania match with Shane was awesome. That was over, him dating Stephanie. And of course that revolved into them almost getting married, but Stephanie marrying Triple H, which then led to, Triple H versus Vince McMahon at Armageddon, and then the heel turn where Stephanie turned on Vince, hitting him with the sledgehammer. Awesome stuff. And then, of course, Vince was so distraught, he ended up leaving the company, which left Triple H and Stephanie in charge, kicking off the McMahon-Helmsley era. That first run of her in the company was so strong. That's what I think of more than anything else. Her winning the women's championship, which sort of did put them on a road of the belt never being defended, just sort of being like a trophy holder for Stephanie to hold on to, and sort of something that it took them a long time to get that back. But they really didn't have a whole lot of women at that time to fight over the women's championship. It was just Ivory and Luna, Sable. They just didn't have a huge roster at that time. It was kind of funny that they brought that belt, but he ended up giving it to Sable, and that's probably the reason why they brought it back. But Stephanie, she had a whole lot of jobs behind the company, raising up to the point where I think Shane left the company because he saw the writing on the wall that Vince was never going to step down and give him the company. And in the company, it looked like Stephanie was climbing the ladder faster than he was. And I think he just wanted to get out and basically just start his own thing. But, she was the head of the writing committee. People like Michael P.S. Hayes, Paul Heyman working underneath her, and her kind of being the one that kind of filtered what was going on with the shows. On camera being the GM of SmackDown. I think that at one point she was the GM of Raw as well, or maybe she was just a figurehead. Well, she was in charge when they were doing the whole, I was going to call them the corporation. What the hell were they called when it was Triple H and Stephanie? That whole group with Corporate Kane. I'm an idiot, I don't remember, and that's my wheelhouse, one of my favorite times in the company. But Steph's awesome. I really wonder, when we're really going to get the inside scoop on the last days of Vince in the company. I think that the Netflix doc on Vince McMahon that kind of told the family, episode 4 and episode 5, I believe, when they get into kind of the family dimension of WWE at the time. That's really one I want to know more about. I bought a Vince McMahon book, I'd say probably 2 or 3 years ago, that I'd have to dust off and find, but I never cracked it. But someday, one day soon, check that out. But I just wanted to go back and basically say, Steph, you deserve to go into the WWE Hall of Fame. At the time, I do question, are they ever going to be able to put Vince in? Shane is somebody that I would love to see. Maybe not back in the company. I really don't know what happened at that Royal Rumble when he was one of the producers, and I guess he produced himself to pretty much go over, even though he wasn't winning the match. you go back and watch that Rumble, the moments that he gets is kind of like more than he's ever got in the history of his career. But Shane's somebody who didn't win a lot of matches, but you remember those matches, and he made the most of everything that was going on, whether it was the X-Pac WrestleMania match, the Steve Blackman SummerSlam match. I remember I think it was a ladder match, maybe it was a street fight against Shawn Michaels on a Saturday night's main event. That was freaking awesome. That was right before the Vince, what am I trying to say? Right before the Vince WrestleMania match with Shawn. But Steph's got good stuff too. Match with Vince, match with Trish Stratus, where they beat the hell out of each other. Good times. Good times. She's going to be one of those people that, you know, deserves to be there. We'll have to see what they do to build a class with her to have that WrestleMania moment. Peace out, everybody.